Morning guys, Moorhuhn here. Today I wanted to kick off a little new series on this channel, and with the new league on the horizon I thought this might be a good moment to do just that, because I want to talk about path of building. And I don't want to go into like, how do we create the most broken character in path of building? No, I want to go about how do I compare characters, how do I fix characters, what to do when I have this build and it says do this and do that, and I feel like I have exactly that and I just don't do the stuff the streamer or the build creator does because somehow my build sucks. What did I do wrong? And today I want to show some methods of how do I fix my build or how do I identify the problems with my build, because in this series we want to do it step by step. I won't cover everything in this video. If you have topics you want me to talk about, tell me in the comments and I can create the next videos cater to these things. So let's just start with the basics. How do I get my character into path of building and what do I do from there? So here we go into the import export stuff, write our account name here, press start, then we get a character list, or we get a league list, then we get a character list, and so forth. For this, I have pulled a character from path of building because I do not have characters in the current league because I've got rid of them. So I don't have great examples, but I've pulled a character from path of building that is a spectral shield throw character and was at the 13 million DPS mark, which is already pretty good. But there are some characters that look fairly similar with a lot more DPS, but I'll go into that soonish. So we just import our character, we import passive tree and jewels, we import items and skills. And hopefully into a new save, and then just save it for now, so we have it done, and there it is. So we have everything here, we have the skills, the tree, everything. And first of all, you want to get somewhat familiar with the layout. You want to know, okay, here I can check my items. I have different weapon sets, which one is active, that can be important. And now I have my character with 13 million DPS, but I just checked POE Ninja, I opened POE Ninja, put some of my items in there that I use, and I see, why does this guy have 90 million DPS? Why don't I have 90 million DPS? Well, let's take a look. So I did import this character into a second POB and put them side by side. Now we have here the 13 million DPS character, and here we have the 100 million DPS character. And the most important part for these comparisons is the calculator tab. This one. At the top, calculator, and there you see everything that's important to understand. Why is my build not doing what it's supposed to be, or why does it look so different to a comparable build on POE Ninja? The second thing that is very important is the list at the left, where all the base stuff is. Where we, like, the first thing, everybody who is somewhat familiar with POB will see, okay, this character has 3k life, this one has 4k life. So there's a big difference in life pool. However, this character is reserving half the life pool, which means, oh, okay, he's using petrified blood. So that gives the initial reaction of, okay, this character is a lot more tanky. However, effective health pool does not reflect that, but I don't want to go into the discussion of how petrified blood works here, because that's a thing for a whole other video. So here we can say, okay, this character uses different defenses. However, this can't be the end of the story, right? So let's take a look at the actual interesting stuff, the damage, because honestly, when we're checking other builds, we want to look at the damage, right? So let's take a look at the damage. And there's some very interesting differences, because the most important thing about build creation, about understanding how a build comes together, is the damage axis. What this means is more multipliers, more or less. There's a lot of axes. All axes independently work as more multiplier. You know probably the difference between increase and more. increase is an increase modifier and more modifier is a more modifier, because more multipliers multiply off of each other. But increase modifier don't do that, but initially they are a more multiplier itself. Not everything that is increase is a more multiplier, but the total value of all increase modifiers is a more multiplier, because everything else multiplies off of that value. So if we have 400 increase damage here, and here we have 800 increase, that means that alone the increase means that this build is dealing twice the amount of damage, if everything else would be the exact same thing. But what we see too is that this character doesn't have, like, it has 100 more. This character has 200 more. But why is that? So we can click more here, and we have two nice pop-ups where we say, okay, well, there's differences. What is the difference? Okay, point blank. This character with 100 million is using point blank. This character still has a few options left, so we check point blank, but nothing changed. Why is that? Configurations. And for configurations, it's very important that when you are comparing two builds, that if you have the same options for the two builds, and you have to be pretty precise about that, then you should have the exact same boxes ticked that are available if you can reproduce that. That is, again, important to check if you actually have it. Like, if you notice here, like, okay, this character isn't using point blank, now he is. Can he use it? For this example, obviously he can, because he's special shield throw, so he can focus on like closer targets. And what we see in the calculation tab is now he suddenly is at 175. 30% more damage. Why is that? Well, because in this chart, the more multipliers are multiplied off of each other already. So there still is something missing that, let's see, what is it? We have 30 here, 30 again. Here we see, okay, hypothermia, 1% off probably is a level. Again here, energy leech compared to awakened fork, different support. So here we see, okay, wait, actually the two builds aren't exactly the same, because we see, where is it? Where's my shield throw? They are using slightly different supports. Need to find it here. So we have it's actually really annoying that these are not sorted properly. Shield throw is the same, hypothermia is the same, elemental damage is the same, vicious projectile is the same. So the only difference is awakened fork versus energy leech. These aren't like insanely far from each other, but if this character also is using like blood rage, which he is, then he is always leeching, which gives him even more damage. But this is an important thing to check. Are the skill setups the same? So this is an important thing to check. And also here we can check for hypothermia. I haven't done level 21, level 20. So if we get this one higher, we check the calcs, and suddenly we are at 2% more damage. We still are a little off, and this is due to this character having more frenzy charges, which come from, where do they actually come from? I haven't checked where they come from, but this character has 2 frenzy charges more, so yeah, might actually just be these. Yeah, this character doesn't have the frenzy charges. Oh, that's miss one. But you see there is some differences there as well, and there we can quickly identify the differences in the build and where some damage is missing. So we say, okay, whatever, that's only 20%. This is a very important thing. 20% quickly gets a lot more the higher the numbers get. Like when you're at 1 million DPS, you're like, okay, it's 20%. Then I'm only at like 1.2 million. What's the difference? The other guy still has 100 million. But when you suddenly reach like 50 million, then 20% damage suddenly is 10 million. Suddenly are at 60 million. So these numbers are not just, okay, I'm 20% less. That's a lot. It's a lot. So you have to remind yourself that when you see a character that has 100 million DPS, that all these axes that scale off of each other affect each other more the stronger they are. So a character that already has a lot of damage has a way easier time scaling even more damage. So these numbers inflate very quickly at the higher end. When you have a character at 5 million damage and want to push it to 10 million, this can be quite the challenge. But if you have a character at 500 million and want to push it to 700 million, it's not as difficult. I mean, there's less scaling options when you have that much damage, but in the end, you need less numbers to achieve more effect, because your numbers already are that big. So this is another thing that's important to keep in mind. Second thing that's very noticeable is the attack rate, 7.7 versus 9.6. This again is 20%, not exact. It's even more. Like it's a big difference. And again, 20%, for example, like 7.7, 115. It's a little more, 25%, something like that. But yeah, again, 25% more damage just from the attack speed. Where's it coming from? You can check the both boxes and see, okay, where's the differences? Why does this character have so much more attack speed? Then another thing that actually what I wanted to show was for the total increase, a thing that I catched on these builds, because I did download these two builds a couple of minutes ago. I just wanted to download two builds and see, okay, what do I find? What is the differences? So one thing that quickly jumped into my eyes was Berserk 80% attack damage. Here, this is missing. Is this character not using Berserk? But for the more, he is Berserk. So what's wrong? What's the difference? And the difference is fairly easy to catch if you actually check the gem. Because here we have Berserk, level 20, 23, default, 20% increased attack damage. Let's check Berserk here. Berserk 2020, Divergent. Buff grants 5% more spell damage. Why? This character is not using a spell. Spectre Shield Throw is an attack, and it's not getting anything from Divergent, neither Anomalous, so you definitely want to use the default version here. It gives 6.6% increased damage. More damage, actually. And here, what is important, that Berserk kind of is a sketchy thing. For damage comparisons, you should always have Berserk off because it's not reliable, but it's just a thing that did, like, it was very obvious that something is wrong with the Berserk. What is it? And yeah, but overall, you should not use Berserk for damage comparisons because it is kinda, like, not really working. Except for some builds that have insane Berserk uptime, but this one isn't one of those, so yeah. Use Berserk appropriately is what I want to say. Then another thing that is very, very noticeable is the crit. Another thing, here we are at a crit multiplier of 7.4, here 6.8. And that's not that much of a difference. It's like 80 crit multi more, even that's 60 crit multi more, where you're like, okay, that's not that bad, it's okay. But then you see the crit effect mod, 6.5 versus 4.5. That's a fuck ton. And where does that come from? From the crit chance. Because you can have a lot of crit multi, but if your crit chance is too low, it just doesn't work well. This one has 85, which is okay. This one has 60. 60 is okay for crit. You can use a crit build with 60 crit, that works. You just have to be aware that crit multiplier you're like getting on your gear is not as efficient as if it was when you have more crit. If you're getting 10 crit multi and have 50% crit chance, it's not 10% more damage. It isn't anyways because of diminishing returns, but if you only have 50% crit chance, it is a lot less than 10% more damage. This is very important to keep in mind, that crit multi is essentially bottlenecked by your crit chance. And vice versa. If you have 100% crit chance but only 200 crit multi, then you probably should put some of your crit chance into crit multi. Overall, having between 60 to 80 crit chance is fine. More oftentimes is better, but at some point you need to find the right balance between crit chance and crit multiplier. And yeah, that's always something to keep in mind. Accuracy here should be pretty irrelevant. But yeah, I think overall the gist of this video is you have to check for the calculations. You have to check where do I find differences and what causes these differences. And from there on, you can check the items, can see what can I do different. For example, you see the rings or the weapon overall. I want to see this rapier looks pretty good. If we remove it, it's minus 29% damage. If we remove this, it's minus 33% damage. That again is not a whole lot, but these 3% more damage in the end are fairly noticeable. And yeah, if we, for example, another thing we can do is we check out this rapier, see, okay, this is pretty cool. It's actually really annoying having it so small. Then we just STRL-C it, and then STRL-F it here, and say, okay, I can put it over, and it would give 6% more damage compared to my current rapier. So yeah, you can just copy over items and see what would be the difference if I exchanged these items. And yeah, another thing that's very noticeable here is that this character is using a Bottled Faith. This character is not. Bottled Faith gives a tremendous amount of damage, but is very conditional. It will only be up in boss fights mostly, or in like, yeah, situations like, but Bottled Faith is a fairly long buff. So if you're fighting a boss that does not have phases and you are at these DPS levels, a Bottled Faith will most likely last the entire fight if you're using it at the right moment. But this is pretty much where the crit chance comes from. If we take out this, we see, okay, the crit chances are fairly comparable. This one has even more actually. And you see that the Bottled Faith alone drops the damage from 100 million to 65 million. And that's what I mean with when you have big numbers. It's a lot easier to achieve even bigger numbers. Because if we take the Bottled Faith and throw it into this character, we this one is using the Granite instead of the Bottled Faith, by the way, so it's more defense again. And then we have to use configurations. I quickly maximize this because I just can't. I use is the enemy on consecrated ground? Yes. Are you on consecrated ground? Yes. And then we see that the Bottled Faith pushes us from 18 million to 29 million. So again, it's a 55 damage multiplier, but here it's 10 million. On the other build, it's like 35 million or something. So it is a huge difference between like having a lot of damage already and scaling that further. So now with a few changes from mostly Point Blank and Bottled Faith, I think we pretty much doubled the damage of the build. And this shows that small differences can make a huge impact. So when you feel like something is wrong with my build, it probably is. And you can check for these things as I showed already. I don't want to repeat everything because that's fairly stupid. And I wanted to show something else here. A third thing that is fairly important, I think, is the compare feature. I did copy the other character here, and now you can put compare in and say these two trees should be compared, and then you see, okay, what is the difference between the trees? The other characters, for example, has leadership in, has Harrier in, has some fairly interesting differences, which are maybe worth to check out. Like you see, okay, this one has retaliation. What does it do for my build? And yeah, here I don't think it's as worth because the total DPS only is at 1.3% per point, which is fairly bad. But yeah, this one here, he gets the next frenzy charge and things I like. Also, what is very noticeable is that this character is using another cluster jewel, but he, well, as we said already, he has a lot less life. He has 67% increased life from 3. This one has 116%, so that's 30%, yeah, even more, 50% more. That's about 10 life nodes from the tree. Because we calculate about 5 to 6% per life node from the tree. And yeah, that's 10 nodes alone in life nodes that this character is using for defense that the other one is not. So I think that wraps up the video for today. And if you have ideas or questions about Path of Building for this series, please write them down in the comments, and I try to like expand on the overall topic more and see what we can do. So thanks for watching, and see you the next time.